Community Partnership meeting. That's kind of strange. Hold on a quick second. I wanted to reflect as we begin our meeting on Dia de los Muertos that was on Monday of this week. We'll be doing a nice presentation about an altar that was created on behalf of the Health Innovation Community Partnership and the Wellness Center. And so I just want to celebrate all of our great artists who are part of this incredible effort to bring a memorial to those that have been lost to the COVID-19 pandemic. All right, so as we get started, tech tips for Zoom meetings, as has been the case for now about 18 months, we've been hosting our meetings virtually via the Zoom platform. So most of you are quite familiar with Zoom at this time, but of course we want to remind everyone to please mute yourself unless you are actively speaking, and you can find all of the control buttons on the bottom of your screen. We really want to make sure this is an interactive session, so we invite you to raise your hand or to add comments in the chat throughout the meeting today. We will have time and space for a lot of Q&A and dialogue. We really want this meeting, particularly the conversation about affordable housing, to be an interactive session. We'll try to allow for as many questions as possible, but please always feel free to use that chat to record a message. Juliana or yes, thank you. Thank you. Once again, that's a great reminder, a great evidence, a case in practice of what happens when we forget to mute ourselves. Sometimes we catch up some of the background noise in our meetings. So please indeed do mute yourself unless we are actively contributing to the conversation. But we will ask you throughout the course of today if you have questions and comments and invite you to contribute at that time. Before we get started, I'd like to read aloud our Health Innovation Community Partnership Guiding Principles. All participants agree to basic principles prioritizing equity, community resilience, and health in all programs and projects. All participants agree to approach issues with an open mind, be willing to engage in dialogue, and commit to thinking boldly about solutions. Participants will state views and ask genuine questions. Participants will seek to avoid monologues and arguments, move to conversations where participants are curious and seek to understand various points of view. Participants will explain reasoning and intent, share how we reach our conclusions so that others can understand our divergent reasoning. Participants will attack the problem and not the person, organization, or institution. Participants will define key terms so that we can attain a shared understanding. Participants will share all relevant information. Participants will always arrive prepared for the meeting. During meetings, only one person speaks at a time. We will not engage in sidebar conversations. Participants will work to develop a comprehensive, common set of information with which to solve problems and make decisions. Participants will jointly design next steps. Looking at our agenda today, we're kicking things off here at 8:45. We will start in just a few moments by inviting Jorge Orozco, the CEO of the LAC-USC Medical Center, to give us his update of how things are going on our campus. Then we have a presentation at 9:05 about campus art projects. And then we will have our Dia de los Muertos COVID remembrance. We will also be talking about our annual member survey. We are reaching the end of 2021, and we want to hear from you about the topics, presenters, and issues you most want to focus on in the coming year. So stay tuned for the annual member survey. We will be sharing the link via the chat and asking you throughout today's presentation to please complete that survey. We will also send it out after the meeting for anyone we may have missed during today's presentation. Then we have a presentation from LA Metro on the LA River Path project, and we will spend the bulk of our time together talking about affordable housing. We have several incredible speakers from LA County and LA City to share with us what is happening to protect and preserve and produce additional affordable housing in our communities. With that, I'd love to invite Jorge Orozco to share with us what's going on the LAC-USC campus.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Let's see, where do we start? Cases in LA County are starting to tick up. which is a little concerning. We're hoping that that tick up is just a seasonal tick up of COVID. But we are in a wait and see. We hope that because there are so many in our community that are vaccinated, that tick up will hopefully be something that is very mild, and we will be able to handle it. One of our challenges has been, since the health order from the state and also the county vaccine mandate has been implemented, we have had to move staff who are not vaccinated outside of any of our clinical areas into non-clinical areas. And so although we've been very pleased with the progress of getting our staff vaccinated, which is well over 95%. And we started with about 1,200 employees out of 10,000 who were not vaccinated. We're down to about 400 or 500. The number fluctuates every day. That has had an impact on our operations. We are much tighter in the emergency department. We are much tighter in terms of open available beds. But thankfully, over the last 3 weeks, we've been able to manage. But there are many staff who are working very, very hard to make that happen. That's been our really biggest challenge lately. We are very pleased with the progress of the restorative care village buildings. The elevator for the courtyard is well on its way. And so we're very excited about those projects happening on our campus. And with that, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Does anyone have questions for Jorge? Jorge, I guess I wanted to ask on behalf of the group about the pediatric vaccine. I understand that's now been approved, and LAC USC will be one of the sites that will be distributing the vaccine. When do you expect being able to distribute the vaccine to youth, and what's the strategy for that?
Yeah, so we are awaiting for shipment of the pediatric vaccine at LAC USC. Once we receive the shipment, we should be able to stand up our ability to deliver the vaccine within 24, 48 hours, but no later than the 13th, so next week. So we're very excited to be able to offer that and to our patients, but also our community members. So anyone who's interested is welcome to come in.
Great, thank you. I know you'd mentioned that with some of the reduction in staffing, it's had implications on the emergency room. Are there other services that are being either transitioned to telehealth or where there's a backlog because of the reduction in staff?
No, it's mainly the flow in our inpatient services that has been impacted because we've had to close several additional beds because of the unavailability of staff. That backs up our emergency department if it's very busy and causes longer waits. But we are certainly very committed to seeing all of the patients that come through our door.
Yes. We have a question in the chat. What is the age range of patients you have seen during the slight peak you mentioned?
Well, we actually have not. We're pretty stable in terms of patients who are admitted to our hospital with COVID over the last probably 8 to 10 weeks. We are seeing patients that are admitted that are primarily patients who are not vaccinated, are those that are being admitted to the hospital. I have seen reports of age range is much younger, and that the spread of COVID is happening in teenagers and young adults, but we haven't really seen that in our hospital. many of the patients who are admitted with COVID are incidental COVID, which means they have been exposed to COVID in the past and they continue to test positive.
Hmm. Yeah, I've heard of that, that can be something where people can continue to test positive for several months after actually experiencing the illness. Is that correct?
Right. The median time after one's been exposed to COVID that continues to test positive is 100 days. So
Hmm.
half the people will test positive more than 100 days, and half the people will test positive less than 100 days. But yeah, that's it's a significant amount of time.
That is significant. Let's see, any other questions for Jorge? I
Yes,
know
this
that,
is Ari.
Harry,
Return. Oh,
Harry.
yeah. Hey, so my question is that, especially now that we have the kids going up to vaccine, and then now that you're saying that you're seeing a tick up, maybe because of cooler weather, people being more in closer proximity. How about getting all the boosters rolled out? You know, getting everybody who has their 2 vaccines going to their 3rd already.
Right. Great question. The booster has been available at LEC USC and in multiple places. The booster is a recommended 3rd dose for Pfizer and Moderna, and 2nd dose for Johnson and Johnson. So it is not part of the vaccine mandate for our LA County and the employees. I have received my booster. Very excited to participate in that, but the evidence isn't as clear on the booster's effectiveness to minimize illness after exposure. There are many studies that show the levels of antibodies do go up, but the relationship of levels of antibodies and protection isn't very well established. That takes years to establish. So it is a recommended shot, and I'd encourage everyone to take it, especially if you're in high risk areas or if you're elderly. Those are the recommendations now.
thank you, Jorge. Additional questions for Jorge about COVID or healthcare on our campus? Well, before we let you go, I wanted to ask you to kind of reflect for a moment about DHS Hospital Appreciation Week. I think it was such a beautiful, kind of set of activities that you guys hosted to celebrate our hospital heroes.
Yeah, we can never do enough to recognize the tremendous dedication and hard work that people give to our community every single day. And so Hospital Appreciation Week, we had several events sponsored by many organizations, but including our foundation here on our campus. And we had mariachi, we had music, we had gifts, we had t-shirts for our employees. It was really, really a great event. Happened outdoors in the courtyard, and people were very excited to participate in a somewhat social event during this pandemic. So it was great.
It was a great event, and it's been so fantastic to see so many people actively using the beautiful courtyard, particularly now with the greater greenery and then the installed artwork and everything. It just was a really lovely, lovely celebration. And as you say, the people on this campus have really put up with a lot, done a lot in this last 18 months, and we have a big debt of gratitude to everyone on your team.
Right.
Before we let you go, one other question was just any updates on the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism initiative on the campus?
Sure. The EDIA groups that have been formed, the subcommittees that have been formed, have gone through capacity building throughout DHS, which is great. They've established and nominated leaders for those groups. They've established a steering committee for all of DHS that is composed of members of each of the subcommittees. And then currently, there are many listening sessions that are being scheduled throughout DHS, both for the community and for staff. And there are announcements in our website on those listening sessions. So please, if you're interested in being heard, participating in this equity, diversity, inclusion, and anti-racism initiative, please make your voice heard and participate in those sessions.
Great. Thank you so much, Jorge. Well, I think unless we have any other questions from our membership, we can say thank you for your time, and we look forward to another update in a month's time. All right. So moving along in our presentation, next up, I'd like to invite Connie Castro and Rosa Soto to talk with us about the commemorative art installation for coerced sterilization victims that has been installed in our campus. It's really beautiful, so we're very excited to hear an update on that. Connie. Let's see.
Good morning, this is Rosa Soto. Unfortunately, Connie's running a little late today, so I will be able to share a little bit of the commemorative installation that we have been working on here on the campus, particularly to commemorate the victims of such a horrific time in our hospital, but also to ensure that we are continuing to heal and to work with our community to develop the reparation process that is most needed to continue to build trust with our community. So thank you, Heather, for putting this up. If you can take me to the next slide. This is mostly just an update of where we are today. So where you see the circle here in red is where the installation is going to live in the future, and most of it is already installed. We do have a few finishing touches that will come over the next few months, and the ceremony will most likely happen in January. Next slide. Here's another just angle straight from the top of the platform where it lies, and will show us a little bit of the area as you approach the space. Next slide. And as you can see here on the ground, our artist Fang Nguyen did an incredible job of ensuring that there was beauty and connection. Under this platform that you see with this decorative flower pieces, there is lighting that will shine above. So as soon as sun sets, the lighting will highlight the beautiful art installation here and will help to draw attraction to the space and create a calming environment in that area. Next slide. And here you can see how some of the quotes that many of the survivors gave during the process of sharing their story is being installed into the concrete walls around the space. So we'll be able to forever see their voices and not forget the impact to them, but also their strength. Next slide. And here will be a plaque that describes exactly what this installation art piece is doing, and it'll help us to be able to share out not just those that have experienced this process, but for years to come, those that visit our space to understand that we embrace all of our history and are with our survivors and our community in healing. Next slide.
That's the end, Rosa.
All right. So if you would like to be part of our committee again that will develop that ceremony that I was describing And we've talked about this a couple of times here at the Health Innovation Community Partnership. We wanted to ask you to let us know in the chat. And we will be also sending out next month's reminder. There'll be 2 meetings before this event will be in mid-January. So we know that the holidays get tight in terms of our time commitments. So we'd like to be able to connect directly to you if you'd like to be part of this group and haven't been part of the group in the past. So please share with us in the chat and we will be back in touch with you. Thank you. Back to you, Heather.
Thank you, Rosa. Yeah, it's very exciting. I really want to, compliment everyone who works at the LAC USC Medical Center and really celebrates, being so honest and transparent about this dark chapter in the hospital's history and really bringing it front and center to be a place of healing and a place of kind of community coming together to recognize the past but move forward into the future. We're so lucky to have such a wonderful piece of artwork that really commemorates those that have been harmed and make sure that we don't forget so that we can avoid repeating the past. So thank you one and all. As Rosa mentioned, if you're interested in being a part of the ceremony, please put your name in the chat so that we can reach out to you and include you in that planning and make sure that you're aware and can participate fully in the events as they come forward. All right, next up, I'm so excited to invite Ari Gutierrez to share with us some of the, speaking of art and speaking of remembrance, share with us our Dia de los Muertos commemoration. Ari.
So you have the PowerPoint? Yeah.
I do.
So first of all, I'd like to commend you for being exactly on time.
Right?
I'm trying to get myself situated. But thank you so much to all. As we mentioned in the last meeting, Dia de los Muertos was happened November 1, November 2. It is not a Halloween. It is a combined religious and cultural event. So we put together a team, if you could move forward on the, to put together a collaborative altar for the for HICP and the Wellness Center and our our collaborative groups. The focus of the altar was the COVID-19 as a theme. Move forward. Next slide. Yeah, and we had a short time to do it, and this is part of what we did, but the culmination was to be able to display it at Grand Park October 22nd through November 2nd. Next slide. We did put together a team. Juana Mena, who many of you may know from this group and the community group. Anthony Gutierrez is the artist. He also happens to be my brother, who I drag to many community meetings. And funny as that may be, he learned, and so the art piece, especially the back part, is reflective of what he learned at General Hospital community meetings. Andrea Infante is Juana's daughter, who and all had an important part in the in development, and everybody had their assignment. Jackie Monroy is Anthony's girlfriend, who also took a couple days off to work on the altar with him. Next. The altar was installed at Grand Park on the 20th. This is part of the verbiage that we came up with. It's really about the disproportionate loss effect to the Latino community, but also what those relationships that we've lost, that impact of that loss, and that's what it was about. That just in the time in preparing this, the numbers that we posted on the piece, within 1 week, we had already lost 100,000 more people to COVID. And since this number, that was on October 10th, we now have surpassed 5 million worldwide who have died of COVID. So, you know, the impact continues, and it was really an important opportunity to highlight the loss to the community and connect education, make the cultural event an education opportunity for our community at large. And we did get some news coverage. If you could go on to the next. This is the back of the altar, which is the main graphic around, with the general hospital being there and the generations of transition. It's a compilation of, you know, spiritual bonds of faith and family, but also the transition between, you know, the granddaughter and the grandmother. But it also is emblematic of the community at large. You know, it's all of it is symbolic. It's really a great piece. There's a tradition of the general hospital being known as the mother on the hill, the grandmother on the hill. So that was what he was referencing when he used this as a primary art piece feature. If we can move forward. The messengers of hope, you know, this is who we are. You know, we use the symbolism of the hummingbird, and it really kind of came together in terms of, even though it is a very cultural element to the art and the symbolism of the holiday. You know, the flowers that that were chosen, and of course the butterflies are also symbolic, you know, of our immigrant community, but and of the cultural holiday. But, you know, we really are doing the work of educating our community, and together as HICP, we are messengers of hope, and hopefully we can connect to that role on a personal level, but also on a professional level. We can go on to the next. This is the front and back of the altar. This is an early view of it, setup of it. It really kind of grew, and we added to it once we installed it. And actually, it was very interactive. If you can go on to the next slide. With the community once it was installed, because people brought their own elements to it. You know, it's like a kitchen cupboard, and there's food, there's you know, the water bottle there waiting for the long, you know, to quench the thirst of the spiritual traveler. But there was a number of pictures that every time I would come back to just check on the altar, you know, there was something else added by the community, and it was so impactful. You know, there was just, you know, a picture of a guy with his favorite car, you know, and a printout that somebody had done, and even something that was having to do with a person's work. You know, they're like, you realize that was a special memento that they were adding purposefully to the art piece. We did use it as an education opportunity and hand out information about for COVID and the wellness center and all that. But we do have, and we will add to the chat, Ismael, if you could please share with us. If you could go to the next slide. There's some links to the audio description of the presentation, and also we want, these are some social media. This is where Supervisor Solis went, I think it was on Saturday night or Friday night, and posted the altar and several others. It was really in a wonderful space in terms of the location of the altar, because we wanted it to be a 360 experience. So we ended up getting a great spot, and you know, with the city hall in the back and all that. The next slide. Some newspaper coverage as well in terms of the COVID point. And I also heard some, national news points, again, connecting Day of the Dead with the disproportionate loss of the within the Latino community. So I think it was another education point and outreach point opportunity that we were able to include in the process. The next. So the great news is that we now have the altar displayed at the Wellness Center. We've moved it. And so it's there for a few days. And if you could please stop by and if we will post the links to the audio so that you can listen to it and let your imagination think about what the symbolisms are and share that with others. That's it. Thank you.
Ari, thank you so much to you and the artists for this incredible installation. We're so excited to have it here at the Wellness Center. I just want to let folks know today we will have coffee and pastries if you'd like to stop by and spend a little time with us. Our artist, Juana Mena, will be there to share a little bit of her experience participating in this installation. And we will have it through next Wednesday, November the 10th. So please come by and visit us. We will also be posting a video for those of you that can't come in person. Thank you again, Ari, for your leadership.
You're welcome.
So I'm really excited because it's right around the corner from where I sit every day in the Wellness Center. And once again, we invite those that are on this campus to come join us and share a moment of contemplation and remembrance for those that have been lost to the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you again, Ari and team. What a wonderful legacy you have created for us here. We're so delighted. Moving on, next up, I want to share with everybody here that we, as it is November and we are rolling quickly into the end of 2021, a most incredible year for all of us, I know. We really want to, get some feedback from all of you to think about what are going to be the cutting issues and topics that you want to reflect on next year as part of our HICP monthly meetings. We'd love to hear from you about the topics, the issues, the questions, the presenters that you want to hear from most. Whatever data you share with us, we will bring back to our co-design committee, and collectively we'll try to build out the agendas for next year to be as meaningful conversations and as impactful as possible. We certainly do hope that 2022 will see us being able to resume in-person meetings and hopefully moving to maybe a hybrid model where people can participate virtually, but people can also come together so we can have those shared tabletop conversations and deeper dives into the issues that we most care about. The Health Innovation Community Partnership has been around since 2017, and we have been really holding incredible conversations that have really helped inform policy initiatives, programs, priorities, and different initiatives around our campus and beyond. We want to encourage all of you to continue your participation in the Health Innovation Community Partnership and to just elevate the work we're doing here. So the best way to do that is to go into our chat. In the chat, there is a link shared by Juliana Vidal. We have our HICP member survey. It's in English and Spanish. So please click forward in the language of your preference. And then I believe I think there's a link at the very top that allows you to pick the language of your preference. But please go ahead and fill that out for us. We really want to hear from you and just learn more about what you're interested in hearing about in the year to come. If the survey for any reason isn't working for you, you're also welcome to add any ideas and thoughts into the chat right now, and we'll capture those and bring those to our co-design committee. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to say a few reminders through the course of this meeting, but please go ahead and click through on that JotForm link now so you can start filling things out and sharing with us your thoughts through the course of the meeting. Next up, we are really excited to invite Mitali Gupta from LA Metro to talk with us about the LA River Path project. This is a really exciting new opportunity with some community engagement coming up in the next couple weeks. So we thought it was especially timely to bring it to Health Innovation Community Partnership today. So with that, Mitali, I invite you to take the podium.
Good morning, Heather, and thank you so much for inviting me. I am Mitali Gupta, and I am Metro's project manager for this project, obviously. And as Heather mentioned, we do have 2 upcoming community update meetings on November 13th and November 17th. And I shared with Heather the flyer, which has all the meeting details, and it's a virtual meeting. So all the, the virtual connections and all of that. And I would really urge all of you to come attend and provide us feedback, because that is the platform where we can collect some community feedback on the project. With that, before I go into the project background, with me today, I do have Michael Cortez, my community outreach manager from Metro. I should have, I'm not very sure, the DEO, who's the Dolores Roybal Saltarelli from Metro as well. She's the project director. She may be running not late, but on time, because we were supposed to sketch up at 9:35, so she should join shortly. And I also have with me Catherine Padilla from KPA. She's our outreach consultant on this project. With that, next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a proposed walking and bicycling path for all age and ability to close the largest contiguous gap on a active transportation corridor along the LA River. The extent of the project is from Elysian Valley through downtown Los Angeles and city of Vernon to the city of Maywood. When it will be complete, this facility will provide seamless 32-mile grade separated regional corridor for walking and bicycling through the heart of Los Angeles, and it will connect San Fernando Valley to Long Beach. 365 million from Measure M is allocated to this project. We started our environmental phase 2 years ago, but then, COVID happened and there was a little bit of pause, but we restarted back the environmental phase last year with the intent of publishing a draft EIR late 2023, early 2024. The proposed project will also need a federal clearance, because the project is on a flood control channel, which is governed by Army Corps of Engineers. And in order to build there, we will need permits, and the federal clearance will need some kind of environmental document for the permitting. Next slide, please. Yes. So as I said, we are on the environmental phase. This is a general flow chart for everybody to kind of just understand what the environmental phase process is all about. We completed our scoping for the project in November of 2019, which was preceded by the finalization of a conceptual design report. Then currently we are conducting our impact analysis for our environmental resources, which will help guide the EIR. On the engineering side, we are conducting advanced conceptual engineering. So once we have the draft admin EIR and then we have the draft EIR published, we will open it up for public circulation and public commenting period. And once that we get that back, incorporate that, and then we publish the final EIR and recommend to the board, Metro's board, to select the project. Next slide. So as part of the project, we determined 6 objectives, and these were presented during scoping, and these were developed early on in collaboration of stakeholders and community members as yourselves. And they are improving safety for pedestrians and bicyclists, improving access from local neighborhoods to employment centers, regional destinations, resources and amenities, reducing vehicle miles traveled by allowing people to get out of their car and do these short trips with walking and bicycling on this dedicated vehicle separated path through through LA County. I live in Orange County, so it comes out very natural to me. Sorry about that. Improving access to opportunities for underinvested communities, creating a path that feels safe, comfortable, and is world-class. And most importantly, it is open and comfortable for people of all ages and abilities. And then creating a path that not only is recreational, but also utilitarian. Next slide. So as I mentioned, the objectives were developed in collaboration with community members and stakeholders. And, we have had robust community outreach through events and briefings and roundtables, surveys, youth engagements, scoping meetings. And then, as I mentioned, we have our 2 upcoming meetings on November 13th and 17th. Next slide. So the environmental impact report, EIR, is going to look at 3 alternatives, like 3 path types of project types, I would say. Alternative A, B, and C. These are more or less very similar because they all align with the river channel, and so they are very much similar in alignment. All of them start and finish on the west bank of the river. That is where the current river path or the bike path stops. They will provide access for communities on both banks of the river, equitably distributing between East Bank and West Bank. So there will be pedestrian bike bridges across the river so that people can go from one bank to another. And they will also have common access points to destinations like Union Station, LA Historic Park, or even the new park that the Bureau of Engineering is building at 6th Street. Next slide. So this is, I won't go through the list, but this is generally the list of access points, as I mentioned, that is being considered. Not that all of them will be for each of the alternatives, but they will be a mixed match of these. And while we will ensure that regardless of which alternative becomes the project, the main, they will have in general the access points to the main destination avenues within LA, the city of LA. And so this will be vetted out with the communities to figure out which ones we choose. Next one, slide. So with the kind of, if you are familiar or if you have taken the train that I take the train up to Metro every day from Orange County, the river channel is very constrained on the right-of-way. We just have active railroads on both sides. And so the way we will navigate this constrained right-of-way is through 3 path types. It'll be either on an elevated structure along the river, which we are calling elevated path type, or it will be cut on the side of the river channel, which we are calling incised, or it will sit atop the river's flood control channel, which we are calling top of bank. And so on the northern portion within the city of LA, it'll mostly be elevated and incised. And when we go into the city of Vernon, it'll mostly be top of bank. Next slide. As I mentioned, that we are trying to provide access on both sides of the river, so that in order to do that, we also have to have bridges across the river. And we have 2 main types of bridge, a multi-span and a free span. The free span has 2 types of the truss and the bowstring. The multi-span bridge puts down footings in the river. As I mentioned, the river is also a flood channel, so we will have to figure out where the multi-span bridge befits based on water level. And that's why we are developing a robust hydraulic modeling for it. And so we have chosen these 2 main types of bridges. Next slide. So not only if the constraints of right of way and engineering not difficulty challenges for the project is enough, we also have to coordinate with at least 7 projects that are within the corridor and within LA, the city of LA. The master plan, our project is compliant with the LA River Master Plan, and within the city of LA, there is a fish passage project. You may have heard about it, the Elysian Valley Shared Path Improvement, the water wheel project around Main Street, then the 6th Street Viaduct and the park projects that the LA Bureau of Engineering is doing. We also have Army Corps' LA River Ecosystem Restoration Project, Metro's Link Union Station project, which is building the viaduct over 101. And then the California High-Speed Rail project, the Burbank to LA segment and LA to Anaheim segment. And as we progress the project through its design development and environmental clearance, we are actively coordinating with all of these projects. Next slide. And this is probably the last slide. Yes, the overall project timeline, and the project is, as I mentioned, we have finished the conceptual design. We are in the environmental phase. By 2023, 2024, we should be able to clear the project and determine what is going to be built. And then we go into final design, permitting, land acquisition if needed. Then we break ground and construction, and hopefully deliver the project by 2028. With that, I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity and would welcome any questions that you may have.
Absolutely. And I'd like to welcome Michael Cortez, who's been replying to some things in the chat. We had some questions about the EIR process. And then we also have a question here from Ivan Matthews. Can you share information on the funding status of the high-speed rail project?
Well, I can't speak for high-speed rail, but what I know that the high-speed rail, this is something that you will probably have to contact high-speed rail. We are not in a position to speak for them, but given the public documents that are on their site, your information is as good as ours, that they probably don't have full funding at this point.
Do we have other questions on the project? It sounds really exciting. And you mentioned that this will connect from the valley all the way down to Long Beach. Is that correct? And that'll be a continuous bike and pedestrian pathway?
Yes, right now from Maywood, you can go all the way to Long Beach, and then from Elysian Valley all the way to the valley. So, you know, this is a gap. And I would really encourage all of you to take a little train ride from Union Station to maybe Norwalk and just turn around and come back, because that will give you an idea for the kind of the challenges that we have, that there is no land, and there is a reason why, you know, this 8-mile gap was always there, and we are venturing upon it now, and especially with this whole greening of LA, and so it fits in right there.
What, if any, impacts of climate change might influence kind of what's happening with the LA River? You know, the LA River hasn't been a really robust river for a long time, but I do wonder if climate change impacts will impact that at all.
You mean how this project can influence climate change? Is that your question?
Actually, it's really more the reverse. How might climate change impact any projects around the LA River? I just wonder what the future of the LA River looks like in a context of climate change. Well, that might be beyond the scope here, but just it raised the question for me. As I was looking at it, it's like, my goodness, you know, what will happen? We think so much about waterways diverting and, you know, either flooding or diminished water resources, and I wonder what that looked like in this context of LA River.
Some of the parallel efforts, and I'm sure you know it more than I do, perhaps, that, you know, okay, so the Fish Passage project is trying to bring in trout into the river. There is efforts to make, right now it's a concrete channel. So there is efforts to make the channel a soft bottom channel, which is part of Army Corps' ecosystem restoration project. There is talk of maintaining the flood channel where there is a disposition study right now going on, or I think there is a scoping meeting coming up next week. Actually, yes, next week there is a scoping meeting. Basically, the county wants Army Corps to relinquish their authority over the flood channel. And so there is a study, and I think the motion went from Supervisor Salisa's office 3 years ago to have the Corps study and relinquish and dispose and give it to the county so that the county does a better job than the federal entities. So there is, I would say there is more effort to reverse kind of the climate change. But again, you know, one of the things I can say that our project will hopefully reduce VMT, which we know that's a vehicle miles traveled that contributes to greenhouse gas, which we know in turn, you know, contributes towards climate change. So hopefully, as people start using it, we will have some reversal. And
yes. And I think also as people become more familiar and view the river as an asset and as a community green space, then, you know, once people fall in love with it and find different ways to use it, then they might become more engaged. We do have a couple questions in the chat. We have one from Monica Alcaraz. Is there a plan to ensure the people experiencing homelessness get services, as there are many that live on the river?
so the issue with the unhoused population is a bigger issue. It's a county citywide issue. And so Metro has a task force, and Metro recognizes it and is working in collaboration and coordination with the city of LA and county. So we will keep that coordination up. And I think there's a presentation right after mine on affordable housing, and we have Nick Saponara from our joint development there with the presentation and answer some questions. So
yeah, definitely. We do have a lot of time set aside for affordable housing conversation. Did I see a question from Ari?
Oh, I just submitted it, but what I was wondering is, will the river be used? Oh, I had heard that the river bed would be used more for water storage and maybe reuse opportunities rather than just a rainwater runoff. Is that part of this project?
no, it is not part of the project. We are not touching the river unless we have to build a path, or we have to build an infrastructure to go from one side of the river to another.
Okay. Thank you.
The other question in our chat is, does our runoff from rain go into the river?
I'm not sure of that, because that is a question for I guess for our county's flood control channel.
Yeah, this is a very intricately connected project, as we can tell. There's many layers and levels. I'm sure LA Metro only has a piece of it, which is this pedestrian bike path, but then of course the river itself has, I think obviously you can tell there's a lot of passion and interest here of how the river is being used and what its future might be. It's very exciting. I know from someone who grew up in Los Angeles with, like you say, this concrete mechanism that's called a river, which doesn't look like anything like a river to me, to think that it might be, you know, starting to be reclaimed and renaturalized is, you know, while keeping people safe, while keeping communities safe, but encouraging use and everything else is really an exciting opportunity. Any other questions for Mitali, for her team here?
Oh, so I think there was a question on DEEIR. Oh, that's the draft environmental impact report.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can you please share the dates for the community? Oh, okay. So we just have it up on the.
Yes. We'll be sending out the flyers to everyone, but just to remind you, the dates are Saturday, November 13th from 10 to noon and Wednesday, November 17th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m., both of which will be hosted via Zoom. So we'll send these flyers around, but those are the dates for the upcoming community feedback sessions. Okay. Well, I think with that, unless we have any other questions, I think we'll say thank you so much, LA Metro, for coming and giving us a view into some of this exciting projects. And I certainly do hope that pedestrian and bike accessibility in these communities and closing that 8-mile gap, that's very, very exciting. What is the timeline on this? When will this be completed?
Hopefully 2028.
By 2028, still a ways to go.
Still a ways to go.
Yeah.
Yes, because there is a process, and yes, so if there is no other question, I'd like to thank HICP for inviting us and giving you a quick update. I would really encourage everybody to attend the community update meetings. As you can tell, this was just like a snapshot. Those meetings are 2 hours long. We will involve the community to get feedback and hear the community, because that is a forum where we can get the community's input into the project. So we would really, really encourage everybody to come and attend. Thank you so much,
Mitali. All right, so before we move on to our next presentation, I want to once again reiterate and remind people to please complete our members survey. The link to the JOT form is in the chat. Please don't leave the meeting today without filling that out for us. It'll be really helpful as we plan our meetings for the year ahead. With that, I am very delighted to invite forward the presentation on affordable housing. We've dedicated a lot of time at this month's meeting to talk about this issue, because it's really been core to so many of the conversations that we've had. We have representatives from across LA County and LA City, and a very rich presentation for all of you about the various initiatives underway. But also we want to leave a lot of opportunity and time for questions, for conversation about this issue and where we are headed. To start us off on the conversation, I'll ask Rosa Soto to set some context for us.
Good morning, everyone. Again, hope my audio is much better at this location than the last, but really thanking everyone for the incredible participation and dialogue with these presentations. Very excited to introduce the affordable housing presentation that is upcoming. As you can see, there's a variety of speakers that have been working very, very hard to ensure that the type of information that is being shared is accessible and important to our community. And the purpose of these presentations, as you recall, part of Health Innovation Community Partnership is to ensure that there is a deeper understanding of the projects and of the scope of housing work in our community than we would receive if we were looking at, for example, a flyer or attending, a meeting where a project is being approved. So here is an opportunity for us to really think deeply and interact with our speakers about the different programs and opportunities available. So thank you so much to this team for coming on and supporting us with this incredible presentation. So we will start with Vani Dandiyaya. I hope I did it. I did your name a bit of any service at all. So Vani, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Rosa. Good morning. I'm Vani Dandalaya with the County of Los Angeles Chief Executive Office. And we're going to start off with providing some background, some context, take a look at some numbers from a recent report by the California Housing Partnership. This first slide shows that over time, past 15 years, there's been a shift in the proportion of renter households and owner households. Whereas in 2005, they were roughly equal, 1.6 million were renter households, 1.5 owner households. And over time, In 2019, we see a total of 3.3 million total households, with 55% renter households at 1.8 million and 45% owner households at 1.5 million. So we see a change. The next slide shows the renter shortfall, or the shortage of affordable homes. On the left, you see there's a total of 783,000 renter households that have a household income of 52,200 or below. And we have they've separated it into three different categories: very low income, extremely low income, and deeply low income. But all together combined, on the right, we see that these households are struggling to find affordable homes. And the county actually needs almost 500,000 more homes in order for these households to find affordable housing. And that's what the red dotted bar shows, the shortage of affordable homes in the county. And this next slide shows, while rent has gone up in the past 20 years, you see the change in rent is 54%, whereas compared to household or renter income has only gone up 16%, which also shows that there's renters are finding more difficult to cover rent. And this slide shows cost burden. And what that means is moderately cost burden is households are paying 30% or more of housing costs, 30% or more of their household income on housing or rent. And that's the moderately cost burden. Severely cost burden shows 50% of household income or more is being spent on rent. So you can see that from the 50% area median income and below, they're spending almost close to 80% of their income, or I'm sorry, the 80 or 90% of these households are spending 30% or more of their household income on rent, leaving them with less income to spend on other necessities. Thank you. And this slide shows overcrowded conditions. We know that so low income is 80% area income or below. We can see that households at 80% area median income or below, almost 30% of those households are moderately or severely overcrowded, meaning 2 adults per room for severely overcrowded, for moderately overcrowded, and I believe it's 4 children for severely overcrowded. And next, Rosa will be going over the HICP communities.
Thank you, Vani. And so, so as you can see, just the importance of addressing this housing crisis is, now ever more important. So if you recall, those of you that might be new, the Health Innovation Community Partnership went through an extensive process over 2017 through 2019 to ensure that our community had enough input into how the Health Innovation Partnership would be formed, how we would be addressing the needs of the community and ensuring that there is a true connection to our neighborhoods. So in particular, the communities that were asked to be called out were Boyle Heights, Chinatown, East LA, City Terrace, El Sereno, Lincoln Heights, Northeast LA, Highland Park. And so as developments come online for these communities, there is this wheel of core values that we look at to ensure that there is an assessment of how that project impacts our community benefits and the core values of our community. You can take me to the next slide. So more specifically, that wheel, by the way, isn't just about housing. It's about all benefits in the community and the deep-rooted uh, concerns that the community has with how our communities are evolving. And so as such, when you think about housing in the area of opportunity, there's a lot of thought around community stability and anti-displacement, home ownership opportunity, and targeted local hire. This being essential to ensuring that projects are not only of benefit to anyone new coming into an opportunity for development, but truly benefiting the community that currently exists. Our culture, making sure that it addresses multi-generational families, design and civic art reflecting our community character and history. By the way, the Restorative Care Village murals that we worked so hard on during 2019 are now up in effect here at the Restorative Care Village. So please come by and see some of the work in progress that is being conducted there. And then the importance of community spaces for people to come together, not just tenants and residents of particular housing developments, but for the community at large. In the area of environment, it is a lot about landscaping, sustainability, and walking paths, and ensuring that there is a true link between our existing community and those new developments. Also, a thought around parking and ensuring that there's adequate parking space when available to ensure that these housing projects have a warm and interconnected welcome into the community. Lastly, service access, advocacy needs for the most vulnerable community services, and particularly ensuring that access to services is available for the most vulnerable, including our undocumented and often forgotten communities. So these are some of the areas that we are digging deeply into and working with our developer and our partners in the city and in the county to ensure that all development is looked at with the lens of community benefit. Next slide. So how do we move forward and how do we resolve the twin crisis of housing affordability and housing the unhoused? This requires a coordinated effort that supports engagement, conversation, right? And a deep-rooted relationship between the county, the city, the state, federal government, and our private nonprofit developers. So as we work together to develop affordable housing, we're really looking to overcome the NIMBYism and increase overall housing stock to address this very urgent crisis that our community is facing today. And so I think if you take me to the next slide, that might take us to the next speaker.
That's right, Bonnie.
All right. And who is our next speaker?
Yeah, Vandi Dandalaya, I think, is going to kick off the rest of the presentation.
Bonnie, do you want to take it from here, or would you like me to go to the slide?
The next slide, is it the next, or is this, oh. So I
can continue, and then I'll hand it over to you. So as we were putting this presentation together, we wanted to ensure that our focus on the county and city's immediate responses to the housing crisis was focused on strategy, projects, and policies, right? So that we're looking at all areas of benefit. New affordable housing development, affordable housing preservation, tenant protections and subsidies, and expanding access to home ownership. In no way is this, a comprehensive presentation, but it is one that ensures that we look deeply at where all of the opportunities are for continuing to influence positively this work moving forward. Vani?
Thank you, Rosa. And as Rosa said, the county team will present next. My colleagues from LACDA, Los Angeles County Development Authority, Department of Consumer and Business Affairs, Department of Regional Planning, Los Angeles County Metro. The overall framework, as Rosa highlighted, will, looking at allocating resources and funding to production of more affordable housing, preservation of existing affordable housing, and protection and assistance for tenants, including anti-displacement strategies. And the Board of Supervisors has committed to fully fund a $100 million Affordable Housing Trust Fund that is administered by the Chief Executive Office. From fiscal year 2016-17 to the current fiscal year 21-22, the board has funded $400 million to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which has been 400 million to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, of which 75% or 300 million has been allocated to LACDA's Notice of Funding Availability, generating approximately 9,900 affordable units with an average unit cost of $521,000. And next, we'll go through each of these strategies. Next slide, thank you. Starting off with production of housing, and Matt Lust from LACDA will tell us more about the NOFA.
Thanks, Bonnie. As Bonnie was saying, the LACDA administers a portion of the $100 million per year that the board directs towards affordable housing initiatives. The LACDA administers approximately 75% of those and serves low-income and homeless populations. In the first supervisorial district since 2015, the LACDA, Metro, and the Los Angeles Housing Department have funded 64 projects accounting for approximately 4,800 units. And during that time, the county's committed just over $200 million to projects in the first district. So of those 64 projects, 27 are included in the HICP focus areas, totaling approximately 1,650 units. And additionally, the first district advocates repurposing county assets for affordable housing production. This includes the LAC USC Restorative Care Village project, for which there's an open RFP now, and we've been discussing that project with the HICP for a few months, as well as what's known as Lot 45 in Chinatown, which has plans for affordable housing, commercial space, and a cultural center. Additionally, sites in unincorporated East LA are similarly being repurposed for affordable housing. So for the next slide, I'll turn it over to our colleague from Metro.
I believe the next presentation will be by Metro.
Hi, are you able to hear me now?
Yes, there you go, Nick. We can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, let me know if I'm getting feedback. I do have the phone on as well because I have a couple kids who are homeschooling this week, and I'm a little worried about the bandwidth, so I'm patching it together here. But good to be with you this morning. As was noted, partnerships is so key between public and private sector partners, and as well as the community. And here at LA Metro, that is very true of our transit-oriented communities work, which really seeks to promote equitable, growing transportation system to leverage all the good that comes with the investment that we are making in a countywide transportation network, economic, health, social, and environmental benefits that come with that, but also acknowledging the negative consequences and impacts and preparing for those as it may occur in communities around gentrification and displacement in particular. And so that really gets to our work around affordable housing. Metro's joint development program is a real estate development program whereby we partner with private developers and work with communities to realize residential and commercial buildings on property that we own around our transportation system. Oftentimes there may be land that's acquired or purchased to support constructing a new rail line, and afterwards has the ability to have serve a community use. And so through a visioning process with communities, we realize what we call joint developments on property around our transit. And to date, since the mid-90s when the program started, we've realized the construction of 2,200 units of housing on Metro property throughout the county, about 750 of those units being affordable. But I think in acknowledging both the important relationship between housing and transportation, and the unabating crisis that we have in LA County, Metro continues to kind of ratchet up, and our board, under the leadership in particular of Supervisor Solis, our commitment to realizing affordable housing development on our properties. And so just this past summer, our board adopted an update to our joint development policy, which essentially commits us to first pursuing 100% income restricted housing on all of our joint development properties as a starting point. And in some cases, based on perhaps the size of a site, sometimes we have large 15-acre sites that are currently surface parking. The size of the site, the desires and needs of the community, the types of construction, mixed income may be more appropriate. And in those instances, we do set now a floor for our policy requiring that at least 25% of the units in any project be affordable at 80% of the area median income or equivalent. But what that amounts to in terms of a commitment over the next decade as a part of this new policy is to realizing the completion of a total of 10,000 housing units throughout our portfolio, with a goal of 5,000 of those being income restricted. And you know, again, starting from a point today with just over 2,000 units as an ambitious goal, but I think one we think is achievable through partnership. An exciting kind of related effort, we are just about to launch a housing lab, which is funded through a partnership with SCAG, with Regional Early Action Planning, or REAP dollars that are available at the state level to drive innovation and accelerate the production of housing. And we're really excited about the housing lab. We see this as a proving ground where housing innovations that allow us to deliver units faster, cheaper, and more equitable, and through pilot projects, including things like community land trust, will be an opportunity for us to focus and deliver on these new big commitments. Just a couple of other statistics as it relates to joint development efforts to date and going forward within communities of interest of this assembled body. There are about 384 units, affordable units, that have been completed to date within the first district, and about just over another 300 are either in construction or in the pipeline of negotiations. And you see some of those projects listed there. So that's just a quick snapshot and overview of our efforts around the development of affordable housing around our growing transportation system. Happy to be part of the conversation and field any questions that may come down the line. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. I think we're going to hold our questions for county until the end of their presentation. So with that, we'll move on to the LACDA.
Thanks. And this is just a quick snapshot of where the projects are located in the HICP focus areas. So when I discussed the 27 projects in the 1,650 units, they're spread out in the communities here, and we'll provide a map afterwards so everyone can see on a better scale. But this gives an idea of where the projects are located right now.
The next slide also addresses production. Enhanced infrastructure financing districts are a tool to finance public infrastructure projects, including affordable housing. This is something that the first district is exploring. A consultant is now estimating future property tax increment and drafting the infrastructure financing plan. And in partnership with the Wellness Foundation, the City of Los Angeles, and Supervisorial District 1, they've applied for a planning grant to explore an EIFD for LAUSC and surrounding areas. Next is a competitive state program, the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities, or ASIC program. Over the past few years, the county has partnered with developers in the city of LA to receive over 100 million in ASIC funding to develop 670 affordable housing units at 6 project sites. 2 of these projects are in HICP communities. The first, as you can see, the rendering shown here at National Corps' 3rd and Dangler, and the second project is Meta's Downey Whittier project. The goal of ASIC is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by building affordable housing next to public transit and increasing public transit ridership, as well as creating bicycle and pedestrian pathways. And the projects, these six sites have plans to develop over 12 miles of bicycle and pedestrian pathways. Next slide. LACDA will next talk about the first preservation strategy, the Pilot Community Land Trust Partnership Program.
Thanks, Bonnie. So in addition to new housing production, the county is focusing also on housing preservation activities. And one of these initiatives is the Community Land Trust Pilot Program. So the LACDA, in partnership with the county's Chief Executive Office, is implementing the program countywide as a strategy to address the increased housing cost burden and risk of displacement experienced by renters across the county. Giving a little background on how we got to the pilot program. In September 2020, Supervisor Solis directed county departments to establish the Community Land Trust Pilot Program and directed initial funding towards that program. Then in November 2020, the pilot program was expanded and additional funding was added. So the program provides funding to community land trusts to purchase and rehabilitate properties in areas of displacement or gentrification. And this stabilizes rents and places a 9 to 9 year affordability covenant on the properties that are currently primarily occupied by lower income households. So in April of this year, the LACDA executed the first grant agreement with the Community Land Trust for the acquisition of 11-unit property in East Los Angeles. And the pilot program is now almost complete. So after the program completes, we'll review how everything went and make recommendations to the board for a continuation of the pilot program or modifications as needed. But we're really excited about this program. It's one of the newer preservation activities, and we were able to wrap this up fairly quickly. So we are happy with how the program's turning out so far. And with that, I'll turn it over to our colleague from DCBA to continue the discussion on preservation activities.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Magallanes, and I am the program chief with the Los Angeles County Department of Consumer and Business Affairs through our Housing and Tenant Protections Division. I will briefly speak about the county's efforts in exploring a TOPA policy, as well as an overview of some of the programs, services that we offer through our division. So what is a TOPA? TOPA is a Tenant Opportunity to Purchase Act, which is a strategic approach aimed to prevent renter displacement by providing tenants, tenant groups, community land trusts, and affordable housing developers the first right to purchase a property when it's offered for sale. So a TOPA makes it possible for community tenants and organizations to be able to compete in the housing market by increasing the pool of affordable housing and through facilitating first-time home buying processes for families and groups of tenants that are seeking to preserve the affordability of their rental properties. TOPA essentially slows down the speculative forces produced by corporate and speculative buyers and investors that essentially drive local real estate prices beyond the reach of our average buyers. And really, this type of policy is another way to just enhance some of the current work on the Pilot Community Land Trust Partnership Program that was previously discussed. The District of Columbia was actually the first jurisdiction to implement a TOPA back in 1980 as a way to address, citywide housing crises resulting from a severe shortage of available rental housing. And it was really credited for preserving, I believe, almost 1,500 units of affordable housing in DC, with many of those neighborhoods undergoing gentrification. And similar versions of these type of policies have been explored in other jurisdictions across the country as well, including Oakland, Berkeley, New York, Minneapolis, for example. So our county is currently exploring potentially a TOPA for our unincorporated areas. So back in August of this year, our Board of Supervisors directed our department to review best practices in order to develop a report with recommendations for the feasibility of implementing a TOPA policy for our unincorporated areas. And then the directives also included identifying consultants to be able to formulate recommendations for developing a TOPA. And so currently our department is in the process of identifying a consultant to be able to help develop a framework for a TOPA ordinance that would essentially include, the funding mechanism, how that would work, and also additional related support and policies that would be included in an ordinance. And so currently working on that. So we're hoping to have potentially a report with recommendations by the summer of 2022. And once the report is completed, then the board would need to take some action in order to implement the recommendations outlined in the report. So based on that, a TOPA ordinance potentially could come to fruition sometime in 2023. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, the DCBA houses our Housing and Tenant Protections Division. So our division is responsible for enforcing our county's rent stabilization ordinance and mobile home rent stabilization ordinances, as well as our COVID-19 tenant protections resolution, which was previously known as our eviction moratorium. So our division provides one-on-one counseling to all residents of the county in order for them to understand their rights and responsibilities under the ordinances, and also refer individuals to appropriate resources, as well as investigate alleged violations of our ordinances. And we do have our contact information again, if for those of you who want to call our hotline, we are available to provide you guys with direct one-on-one counseling and kind of walk you through any questions you have related to your rights and protections. In addition to that, we also have our Stay Housed LA program. This is a public-private partnership with the county, the city of LA, and community-based organizations in order to provide free legal representation, some short-term rental assistance, and also referrals to wraparound services in order to help prevent evictions, especially during this COVID-19 pandemic, and also have our contact there. But these are two really big programs that we have through our division. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out on the website. Our phone numbers are there to learn more about these programs.
Thank you, Laura. Next up, we'll be hearing from LACDA on tenant assistance, rent subsidy, and owner incentives.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. My name is Tracy Mann, and I am a director of the Housing and Assistance Division with the LACDA. I'm here to provide you with an overview of our tenant-based assistance, vouchers, project-based, the Open Doors program, as well as the California COVID-19 Rent Relief Program. So the LACDA administers the second largest rental assistance program in the Southern California area and receives funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to provide housing subsidies to eligible low-income families residing in the unincorporated neighborhoods of Los Angeles County and 62 participant cities. The HCV, or Section 8 program, is the federal government's major housing program for assisting individuals and families who are chronically homeless or homeless veterans, elderly, and the disabled afford decent, safe, and sanitary housing in the private market. Eligibility for the HCV program is based on a family's annual gross income and size and is limited to US citizens and specified categories of non-citizens who have eligible immigration status. Families, who receive a tenant-based voucher are responsible for finding a suitable housing unit where the owner agrees to rent under the HCV program. Assisted families must pay between 30% to 40% of their monthly adjusted income for rent and utilities, while the LACDA pays a housing subsidy directly to the landlord on behalf of the family. In addition to the HCV program, the LACDA administers other low-income housing programs, including Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing, Continuum of Care, Family Unification, a recently awarded voucher allocation for foster youth to independence, housing opportunities for persons with AIDS, mainstream vouchers, emergency housing vouchers made available through the American Rescue Plan, and then project-based vouchers. So project-based vouchers are subsidies that are attached to a unit in an approved project for 20 years. The Housing Assistance Division within the LACDA uses this program to partner with developers and service providers to create housing opportunities for special populations such as elderly, disabled, transition-aged youth, and families with a member affected by a mental illness. As part of the PBV program, each project also offers various supportive services specific to the needs of the population being served. The LACDA currently has a total of 46 PBV buildings countywide with 1,656 affordable units within those 46 buildings. Of these, 2 project-based buildings are located in East Los Angeles, and those 2 buildings contain 38 affordable units. So in total, the LACDA administers just under 30,000 vouchers and certificates to assist individuals and families with housing subsidies through the various programs. Next on my slide is the Open Doors program. On January 15, 2019, the Board of Supervisors called upon the LACDA to create a plan to implement recommendations to address the homelessness crisis in the county. The implementation of a new LA County Tenant Protection Ordinance, which became effective on January 1st, 2020, made it illegal for property owners to refuse to rent to tenants simply because they were recipients of housing assistance. This created an opportunity for the LACDA to seek out new property owners to participate in its rental assistance programs and show owners the benefits of participating in the Section 8 program to ultimately increase the number of families who can utilize our vouchers. The LACDA developed an innovative solution to this problem, a new incentive and mitigation program with the goal to retain current property owners, entice new owner participation, and heighten rental assistance program confidence. The LACDA debuted its customer service unit and launched a new business model called Open Doors. This model centers on providing an enhanced customer service experience for property owners. Open Doors is a collaborative effort between the LACDA and Los Angeles County, offering a host of owner assurances and monetary incentives. And as of August 1st, we've paid out over $2.6 million in incentives that have assisted over 1,400 households. And finally on the slide is a reference to the California COVID-19 Rent Relief Program. So the state's program application portal launched on March 15th of this year, with the program's focus being to stabilize low-income households through the payments of rental arrears to both landlords and or tenants. Over 130 organizations within the state's local partner network have boots on the ground to assist people in their communities. Eligibility requires tenants' income to be below 80% of the area median income. The households must be at risk of experiencing homelessness or housing instability, experienced financial hardship due directly or indirectly to COVID-19. No proof of citizenship or immigration status is required. As of November 3rd, over 23,000 LA County residents received well over $349 million in rent relief and utility assistance. Tenants and owners who are interested in more information can apply directly to the website housingiskey.com or by calling the telephone number 833-430-2122. That concludes my presentation, and I believe next up is Ayala Scott with DRP. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Before we let you go, I have a quick question in the chat for you, which is, How is this program different from Stay Housed LA? I'm assuming we're talking about the rent relief program.
Well, I can just say, I can't speak to the Stay House program. Laura can talk more about that. But the state's rent relief program is, it was funding initially authorized, let me see, earlier this year. There was a first tranche of funds that were received to each state and locality, which the County of Los Angeles decided to release those funds to the state for administration of the program. And it's specifically designed to pay rental arrears back to, I believe, March of 2020, and then pay forward 3 months of rental assistance. So Stay House is a separate program, but I can let Laura answer that question.
Sure
Okay,
thing.
thank you so much for that clarification. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Heather. Yes, so Stay Housed LA is a local program separate from the rent relief program. Stay Housed LA focuses primarily on eviction prevention and defense. So we connect with our legal defense organizations as well as our community-based organizations to do specific tenant outreach, and we'll be able to provide free legal representation for those that are facing evictions. Part of that is the provision of some short-term rental assistance, but primarily it's focused on the legal representation and eviction defense.
Perfect. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Tracy. That really helped explain the difference between these programs that sound kind of similar to the outsider. With that, we will pivot and ask Ayala Scott to talk with us a little bit about land use in unincorporated LA.
Thank you. So my name is Ayala Scott, and I represent the Department of Regional Planning, and I'm with the Housing Policy section. Our department regulates how land in the unincorporated areas can be used, what kinds of homes and businesses can be built where, and what they should look like, how many there can be, and also how affordable do they need to be. So the emphasis of our work is to increase housing choice and affordability, both for rental and home ownership, and also to protect against residential displacement. We implement local policies, but there are also many state laws that regulate housing that we also implement. So I'll give you an overview of some of the recent and upcoming housing policy initiatives that we're working on. So one is the Affordable Housing Preservation Ordinance, and that took effect earlier this year. And it requires new development that is going in on a site where there is existing housing or there was recently existing rental housing, to look back and include new housing that is affordable at the income levels of the existing or recent occupants. The idea is that new housing should not result in a net loss of affordable housing in the community, so that the supply of affordable units does not decline due to new development. And another major effort that our department will be working on is the inclusionary housing feasibility study and update. So under inclusionary housing policies, that means that when new housing is built, that a certain percentage of the new units are set aside as affordable. So in unincorporated areas of East LA, you do have an inclusionary requirement for condominiums and single family homes. So homeownership projects, but not new rental projects. The feasibility study that was conducted for rental in 2020 did not support a rental inclusionary requirement. However, we will be moving forward with two efforts to address affordability requirements. One is an update to the feasibility study next year, which will look at inclusionary requirements for the areas and housing types in the county that were not initially found to be feasible. In addition, the entire study will be updated again by 2023. The other effort is tied to the housing element and metro area plan. Metro area plan is similar to the City of LA's community plan updates, and the area plans are an essential part of showing the state that we in the unincorporated areas can meet our regional housing need as part of the housing element. So as part of the metro area plan, we will be demonstrating capacity to accommodate our share of the regional housing need. And as part of that, lots that are rezoned in East LA to meet the need for housing affordable to lower and very low income households under state law will be required to provide a 20% set aside of affordable units to lower income households for both rental and homeownership. This also applies to certain sites that are not being rezoned, but that were counted in previous housing elements. So the county is kind of moving forward with affordability requirements, both, comprehensively and also on certain sites. The metro area plan also provides another opportunity to explore community benefits, such as public open space, green space, community facilities, and other benefits that would be tied to new development. Other efforts that the county is working on have to do with incentives for acutely low income housing, which I will get to on the next slide, as well as trying to expand again housing choice and affordability by revisiting how we define housing. So looking at the definitions of housing in the zoning code that we allow and seeing where we can provide more flexibility. And also stay current with all of the relevant state laws that tell us local jurisdictions how to regulate housing specifically for special needs populations, to make sure that we are up to date with all of the latest definitions and are not placing barriers to housing, particularly for things like supportive housing and also residential care facilities, to make sure that we are in line with all of the state requirements on that front. But also looking at where we can expand housing choice and affordability in other ways. So for example, revisiting the requirements that we have currently for single family homes. Currently there is a requirement that a single family home is considered to be at least 800 square feet in size. We have heard that that may not be useful anymore, and that some families may not require 800 square feet for a single family home. So, looking at kind of definitions that we've had in the zoning code for decades and trying to see where we can be more flexible to try to encapsulate more ways that people are living, to consider that as housing as well. And then I did speak a little bit about the metro area plan, but I just want to reiterate kind of some of the policy, the overall underpinnings of the county's housing strategy. In addition to increasing housing choice and affordability, one of the strategies is to try to, focus housing development, near jobs, near transit and services, and, to try to cut our greenhouse gas emissions, reducing the need to drive long distances between housing and jobs. This is in line with also the county sustainability plan as well, so trying to prevent the need for, to kind of extend further and further into areas that are far from jobs and also more prone to things like wildfires. Next slide, please. So one of the ways that the county can move affordable housing forward on the state level and to try to use our influence to try to make major change is through lobbying in Sacramento to change state laws. Here are some examples of the bills that the county has sponsored in recent years to really try and move the needle on affordable housing. So recently, AB 634 was a bill that the county sponsored, which allows local governments to require an affordability period longer than the 55 years that is currently in the state law for units that qualify a developer for a density bonus. So the state allows projects that include affordable housing to qualify for certain benefits, such as additional density, additional height, and things like that, on the condition that the rental units remain affordable for a minimum of 55 years. But the county wanted additional flexibility to require an even longer affordability period when those units are also being counted towards those inclusionary requirements that I mentioned earlier. So that is in place, which gives the county more flexibility to require longer terms of affordability. AB 1043 adds acutely low income households, which are defined as 15% of the area median income in state law. So that is a definition that anyone in the state can use to do things like design incentives for providing housing at that acutely low income level. The county will be updating its affordable housing incentives accordingly in order to recognize this, this very important new income category that was recently added. And finally, SB 329 was from 2019, which prohibits landlords from discriminating against tenants who rely upon housing assistance in order to pay their rent. So, you know, for example, having a Section 8 voucher cannot be a reason for a landlord to deny, you know, renting a unit to somebody. So that was a state level bill that the county helped pass a couple of years ago. So these are just some of the ways that the county can kind of, you know, pull its levers and try to, you know, use its power to encourage housing choice and affordability. And with that, I will turn it over to the next speaker.
Thank you, Ayala. I think Vani will conclude us out. Is that correct?
Actually, I'm going to be doing the honors here.
Wonderful.
Just to summarize, I just want to thank everyone that has presented. Again, the various strategies that the county is engaged in to address the critical need of housing. And one of the things I wanted to, first of all, share is that this issue of homelessness that was discussed in October and affordable housing is very, very critical for Supervisor Solis. And she has, in fact, spearheaded various efforts, including those pertaining to anti-displacement. And again, very engaged on the reuse of our county assets, as you know, with LEC, USC, and various other sites. So we're very excited about this. And we know that this is very critical for the uplifting of our communities. Also, I wanted to share, a lot of information has been given. We want to make sure that you know that if there's an interest on any of these areas that have been discussed, we could come back and do a deeper dive and further discuss in more detail. So the conversation will continue on these matters. I want to assure you of that. And you know, in light of all the presentation that was given, as you have heard, in order for us to, you know, address the nearly 500,000 unit shortfall, not to mention that I'm sure it's going to be increasing given the pandemic, the impacts of the pandemic that have exacerbated the situation. We know, and it's clear to us, that a multi-pronged approach rooted in best practices is needed for the production of housing, the preservation of housing, tenant protections, and assistance. We also know that in order to address in a more holistic manner, community engagement and community benefits are crucial, especially to our most vulnerable communities that have multiple needs. Also, given the cost of housing, and we know that there's not endless funding, we know that leveraging our resources, whatever we have, is very critical, and also public and private partnerships. All of these strategies, affordable housing, you know, we know as well that it's going to be very critical that we have front and center, that we need to address historic inequities and increase equity and opportunity through these opportunities. So I just, again, want to thank everyone, and I want to turn it back to Heather for question and answer. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you all so much. It's pretty incredible to get a table like this together for such a meeting to really explore the different opportunities and kind of questions around LA County's approach to affordable housing. We do have a handful of questions that were raised in the chat during the presentation, so I will kind of read through some of those and ask the appropriate person to respond. One is related to, there's a direct question of, is it correct that 2/3 of the available funds, AHTF, have gone to the first district?
So this is Matt from LACDA. That graphic was from 2015 until now. So we attempt to distribute the funds equitably countywide. There are some differences, of course, depending on what projects we get. So that we don't put we haven't put 2/3 in the first district, but we do have a lot of projects there.
Thank you, Matt. Another question or comment is really about the fact that downtown LA is not included in the specific area of focus for HICP, but just a comment that is there an under kind of apportionment of affordable housing in the downtown LA developments as opposed to other areas?
So this is Matt again from the LACDA. We do have quite a number of affordable and special needs housing projects in the city of Los Angeles. We didn't focus on those for this presentation, but we do have probably somewhere between 40 and 50% of the housing being produced in city of Los Angeles neighborhood, not necessarily downtown, but in this Los Angeles communities.
Yes, thank you. Is there a study that shows with the transit-oriented housing that public transportation has increased, or has it remained the same? The concern is really that so many people really are very reluctant to give up their cars, often have multiple cars, and with reduced parking, it actually increases the demand on street parking in those communities.
I'm not sure if Nick is still with us.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, there you are, Nick. Yep.
Oh, sorry, still juggling these multiple devices here. What we certainly know is that housing, transportation is a major contributor to the housing plus transportation equation that really burdens so many Los Angeles residents. And folks who occupy affordable housing units and are of lower income tend to be transit dependent, do not have access to a vehicle. And the population that we're serving through these affordable housing units near transportation do have greater propensity. And so there are opportunities to reduce the amount of parking near transit, and that is part of the strategy of really providing alternatives. We know that there's a jobs housing imbalance, and the cost of affordable housing proximate to employment centers is a major issue that's facing the region. And by providing housing in urban and dense kind of portions of central parts of our county near transit, we're able to provide alternatives for folks along with other means of shared mobility. That's part of the really providing an option, alternative option to a single occupancy vehicle households.
Thank you, Matt. Another follow-up question. Does the right of first refusal apply to all Metro funded projects if the project removes an existing unit where low income households reside?
Well, so I think if I interpret this with respect to the question of if there are households that are displaced for a Metro project, do they get to occupy housing units that may be built on those sites? And I would say when it comes to our joint development projects, we don't acquire property for the express purpose of joint development. It's often through the course of construction for a project. And so for starters, we certainly try to avoid residential displacement wherever possible. And we're talking about acquiring property for new rail lines along commercial corridors. That's usually achievable, but also keep in mind that you may acquire a site for a project. It may take several years, a decade to build that project, another several years to then plan and conceive of a housing opportunity. It's just not necessarily practical that folks would be able to re-enter into those individual units. And certainly, folks are compensated if whether it's a residential or a commercial displacement occurs in terms of relocation expenses. But I think just from a practical perspective, the time span between when that occurs and when an opportunity for new housing may occur makes that a challenge.
Yes, thank you, Matt. I think with that, let's see, there's one other question here. Did the AHPO and IZO for LA County pass with 99 years life of project for affordable units?
Yeah, so the HPO and inclusionary housing ordinance require affordability and perpetuity. The exception currently, well, prior to the change in the state law, was that for the density bonus, the units that were counted towards both the density bonus and inclusionary then that was under the density bonus duration, which was 55 years, which is why the county sponsored legislation to try to allow us to not observe the 55 and to impose a longer affordability period. So whether that's 99 years or perpetuity, the county now has the flexibility to require that. So with that in place, we will be adjusting the inclusionary housing ordinance to allow for a longer affordability period.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. A comment also about just how do we ensure that we minimize the increasing density in LA County? Are other counties doing their fair share? Are these programs also happening in other counties so that we can, kind of manage the entire Southland or the entire, trouble in the state of California? In the interest of time, I'm going to put a pause on that question, and if someone has time to answer it in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated. But I do need to pivot to our next presenter. I'm really delighted to welcome Claudia Monterosa from the City of Los Angeles, who will be now sharing with us the city's efforts to help increase affordable housing and reduce the risk and experience of homelessness for our most vulnerable neighbors. So Claudia, please, welcome.
Thank you so much. Good morning for that introduction too. And it's a pleasure to be with you this morning. I think the county did a fabulous job outlining a lot of the affordable housing efforts, both on new programming, reaching out for new funding opportunities and policies. And so I will try my best to provide a very high level overview of the city's efforts on the affordable housing front. I do want to say that we have been doing this for a very long time. We work very closely with the county, with the various agencies that are represented here this morning. And I will interject and really state where those nexus and where that really great collaboration is taking place. I will follow sort of the same buckets, big overarching buckets of how we are approaching affordable housing. And this is a conversation about affordable housing, not homelessness housing. So those are two very different things. They're different efforts. Some of them do cross over, but I'll start with the first one, which is the production of affordable housing. And this is something that we have been engaged in very meaningfully and very thoughtfully over the course of several decades. In my time in the city, so far, we established the first affordable housing trust fund back in the 2000s. And since then, we've had a dedicated funding source, not from local sources, but this is where we put in our money that we receive from the federal government and any other resources. So having said that, I just want to give you an overview of our production efforts, current efforts. We do have, and we created the Affordable Housing Managed Pipeline that draws in from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund back in 2013. And we have an approximate funding amount of about $50 million per year. We definitely, just like the County of LA, suffered a great deal when redevelopment law was eliminated in the state. And so now we have a lot less funding availability for affordable housing. However, based on federal funds, we do have approximately $50 million a year. We also just now, through the creation of the Affordable Housing Managed Pipeline, which was created because the City of LA has its low-income housing tax credit apportionment, and we manage that along with CIDLAC and TCAC. And because of that, we are able to create a pipeline of projects that has a 2-year view. So just recently, the city released through its housing department a new NOFA for the Affordable Housing Managed Pipeline, in where 14 projects were selected to be in that managed pipeline, totaling over 1,600 units over the course of the next 2 years. And we will be reopening that NOFA again next year. So the purpose of this is to always have a perpetual pipeline of projects. Now I'm going to go into the proposition HHH. There might be a lot of questions about this specifically. Prop HHH was was approved by the voters in 2016, and it is the city's goal. The city's goal is to create 10,000 units of affordable housing, mostly of those dedicated for permanent supportive housing. And this is supposed to be taking place between 2016 and 2026 by investing these critical dollars into for the most vulnerable of our populations. As of right now, we have let's see, we have construction. We have about 10,800 units that are either completed, under construction, or in a development phase. And we're approximately a year ahead of schedule at this point. And we have now created over 1,000 units that are ready for occupancy. And 2022 is really gonna see a plethora of these projects opening up. So we will have thousands of units that will come online. And so just as explained in the prior section of this presentation, how permanent supportive affordable housing production definitely takes a little bit of time, but we've done a lot on that front as well. But I just really want to emphasize what great effort the city has taken to really create this unprecedented number of units in a very short period of time. So to date, we have 42 properties for the most vulnerable, with 27 apartments that are ready for occupancy and are operating, including 16 that are HHH financed. So on top of the HHH funding, we have our affordable housing managed pipeline, as I explained. So we're not only focusing on the development of HHH, but also on our regular family housing, senior housing production. On top of that, we also have a city-owned land disposition. And a lot of this was created through the dissolution of redevelopment back in 2011. And a lot of those properties that were formerly owned by the Community Redevelopment Agency in the city of LA were passed on to the city of Los Angeles, and we became a housing successor agency. And we've also have garnered additional units. And so total right now in our city-owned land disposition program, we have about 59 sites in the pipeline, potentially yielding 2,000 units. And we have so far 3 completed projects and 19 are under construction. So next slide. On the preservation side, while we're doing everything that we can absolutely to produce affordable housing, in particular with a heavy emphasis on permanent supportive housing to address our homelessness crisis, we have a preservation priority as well. This is to prevent the further displacement of folks through our tenant renter protections, which is a different part of preservation. And in this slide specifically, we're focusing on the preservation of at-risk affordable housing units that have a covenant or a regulatory agreement attached to that property. Most of them, ranging anywhere between 20 to 55 years in terms of when they're going to be expiring. The city of Los Angeles has in its portfolio of affordable housing about over 5,600 units of affordable housing units with more than 1,400 developments throughout its city. And preserving this precious housing stock is of primary importance to us. And I'm happy to really state that for the first time in a long, long time, we are going to be dedicating resources for the preservation of affordable housing through 2 new permanent sources of funding. One, it's our affordable housing linkage fee, which was passed in 2017, at the end of 2017, and it's been in effect since June of 2018. And it has been generating affordable funding for affordable housing for the last 3 years. And about 20% of those revenues will be dedicated to preservation. The other permanent source of funding is the SB2 dollars from the state. That is also a permanent source of funding, and there will be dedicated funds for the preservation program. And so what that means is that we are in the process of preparing guidelines for what that will entail. And here is just a number of the considerations that the city is considering, which is how many units do we need to be able to preserve? Do we do the deepest affordability? what is the geographic prioritization for these efforts. The City of LA also modeled a lot of the preservation program for other cities, because it had a very it has a very comprehensive approach in which it has a tenant region education program, both for tenants and for landlords, in an effort to implement the state notification ordinance. No, I'm sorry, not the ordinance, the state notification law. We don't have an ordinance yet, but I'm really happy to see that the county is definitely moving forward on that. And so we will be doing a lot on this front, because we need to be able to stop the spigot and prevent these units from converting to a regular market rate, rental rate. So while we're producing, we need to preserve so that we have a net gain, not a net loss of affordable housing units. The other exciting opportunity on the general preservation bucket is this opportunity in Caltrans 710 properties in El Sereno, and there was a recent legislation, SB 51, that prioritizes the disposition of these properties in the city of LA to be able to be purchased at a very low price for the purposes of creating affordability in that site, in that general area, which is City 14 mostly within, and also the that area. So that expect more activity to come in that front, and we're excited about the prospects of that. So recently Caltrans did release guidelines on that, and we are actively working very closely with our City 14 colleagues. Next slide. So while we're doing production and preservation, we also need to look inward and see how we can actually, as a city, be able to expedite the permitting and approval of affordable housing projects. So our mayor has actually done quite an extensive amount of work on this in Executive Directives 19 and most recently Executive Directive 30, which brings together 11 city departments to manage and coordinate the affordable housing pipeline. We have expediting units within the planning department, and we have a working group with the various development departments, including our affordable, including our Los Angeles Housing Department. This mandate, this ED 13 is going to really, and we already seen some of the excellent efforts and progress because of this executive directive. And so at the end, so far right now with our Los Angeles Building and Safety Department, we're already gonna have a projected goal to reduce assignment times by 43%, to reduce the processing time by 97% by the planning department, and to reduce overall project times for DWP by 32%. Basically, this will translate into reducing about 100 days in the overall permitting time. Time is money, and that is something that we're actively pursuing so that we can continue to expedite the approval of affordable housing projects, especially with the dire needs that we are facing. Next slide. So as we are doing, we're building this, building upon each of these buckets. The other big bucket item for us is land use. And I heard from our LACDA folks that they're focusing on a lot of land use incentives and land use directed policies. And on the same vein, the City of LA is doing the same thing. And we've been focusing on land use and housing, affordable housing for a long period of time. Right now, the city, as we speak, is currently going through its housing element program. Every jurisdiction in the state of California needs to do this for its sixth cycle of the housing element. And as Vani illuminated at the beginning of the presentation, the need is great, but the need is really substantial in the city of LA. We have 255. We have to rezone for up to 255,000 units of housing in the city of LA in the next 8 years. But we have to engage in a rezoning program that is approved by the City of Los Angeles City Council and our mayor in the next 3 years. So as soon as the housing element is adopted, the city will be hard at work, the planning department, our office, and Los Angeles Housing Department working together to address and to have the rezoning program that is necessary in order to comply with state law. Another big element of that land use policy and equitable distribution of affordable housing is to apply and to meet the affirmatively furthering fair housing elements. This is a brand new element of state law, and it comes from the federal government in the way that they are implementing fair housing laws nationally. And there's going to be definitely enforcement mechanisms by the state that they will utilize if localities are not compliant with its rezoning programs, increasing the capacity and adhering and applying, meeting the goals of the affirmatively furthering fair housing. The city of LA, though, however, has been doing quite a bit on the land use side, and increasing and including affordability incentives into its incentive programs, including density bonus and the transit-oriented communities plan. Program. Currently, right now, we're pursuing an inclusionary zoning feasibility study. So that will be coming through the city council in the next few couple of months. And so the housing department and the planning department will be engaging in this in 2022. There's also going to be an exploration of affordable housing overlay zone, and really looking carefully at how affordable housing in general is equitably distributed in the city. And this will definitely come to head as we deal with this rezoning program and how we're going to increase the zoning capacity overall in the city. And we'll be using a number of tools, such as the community plan updates and the consideration of inclusionary zoning and other tools that are available for us. But also to put it in context in terms of the county's regional housing needs, the city of LA makes up 55% of that need, 55%. To put it in context. And so we do definitely need the county and every other jurisdiction to really be able to do its fair share of producing and preserving affordable housing. All right, so next slide. As we build on these areas of work, we also have to be paying close attention to protecting the existing residents of the city of Los Angeles. The city of LA is a city of renters, having nearly 65 to 70% of its population being a renter, from a very lowest income spectrum to the very highest. We as a city had been already actively working in pursuing aggressive tenant protections via our existing rent stabilization ordinance, and doing periodic updates and technical changes to make that ordinance a lot stronger. And we were already engaging in developing an eviction protection program before the pandemic hit really hard last year. And so that all got us to, it propelled all of these actions that we were already planning. And on the front of tenant protections, divided this into two different buckets. One is the rental assistance programs protection snapshot. This came into full effect at the end of 2020 when there was COVID CARES relief funding, in the city at that time had the largest rental assistance program in the nation, really deploying $100 million in 6 months to 49,000 households receiving $2,000 in rental assistance. And in 2021, we just had an explosion of rental assistance funding, and we've been very, very grateful and very aggressive in garnering any available funding to really assist our vulnerable tenants. And so in the emergency rental assistance program round 1, I'm happy to say that we have met the deadline for the deployment of $235 million to households in the city of LA. And we had our application process open for just 1 month in the month of April, and we received over 70,000 applications for that rental assistance. And all that money has already been deployed or will be deployed to tenants by the end of this year. And for our second round of emergency rental assistance, we received a similar amount, closer to $300 million for the city of LA, but we elected, as the county has, to be an option A city. And the reason we did this was to really be more expeditious in accessing the pool of funding at the state level, which is at that time that we were considering this was $5.2 billion of rental assistance funding available at the state level. Since we joined the state's program, which is Housing is Key program, and one of the speakers provided the website for the Housing is Key, the city of LA since September 2021 has had over 97,000 applicants submit their requests for rental assistance. So that totals over $1.4 billion in requests as of right now. And we're actively working with the state of California to ask the Treasury for additional funds. The need is great, and we need to do a lot more on this front. And we need to keep our residents housed and securely housed, and try to do as much as we can to address housing insecurity. So next slide, in terms of the rental assistance is one aspect of the tenant protections, and the second bucket is the eviction protections aspect. So if we can go to the next slide. As it was stated by the previous slide. There you go. Thank you so much, Heather. So the other component of addressing housing insecurity is our city's eviction defense program. And as I alluded before, we had already been actively working in implementing and designing a program that was really comprehensive in nature. And with the COVID crisis, we were able to successfully have our program approved in the summer of 2020. And this program is slightly different than the counties, but it's very, very similar. And I do want to say that we work extremely, extremely close with the county LA DCBA colleagues, and we share and basically help fund the Stay House LA platform. This is the main platform for tenants to seek to seek eviction defense assistance, either pre-eviction or if a tenant has received a tenant notification or an unlawful detainer or an eviction notice. And aside from the Stay House LA, we also built our program to include our series of family source centers to have an additional outlet for tenants to really go and ask for assistance. And we are actually also funding staff, at least one person per family source center for 8 family source centers to really provide direct assistance to tenants facing housing insecurity. And so our work is pretty comprehensive. It's education and outreach to renters and landlords through Stay House LA, legal representation through Stay House LA, pre-eviction support to help households avoid housing court, and ongoing case management to help households not to avoid eviction once they get that, and to help them stabilize long-term. And another component of this eviction protection program for the city of LA is a carve-out for rental assistance as well, above and beyond the ERA program. And then I'm almost done. The other component of the tenant protections is really how we communicate with our tenants. So being very meaningful in how we outreach to tenants, vulnerable tenants, the areas that are most vulnerable. So that's the next slide. If you can just go to the next slide. and really having an approach that is inclusive in its outreach. And so through our contractors, we are ensuring that all of our materials are translated in all the primary languages, and that there is assistance through a local network of service providers. So this is what's going on the ground at the local level at the city of LA. And the last slide that I want to spend some time on is our key legislative priorities and recent wins, and what are we doing both at the state and at the federal level. At the state level, we had some significant wins in terms of additional brand new funding from the state of California in the form of Home Key 2.0 and HAP program, which is to address homelessness services in the state of California. And the other significant win that we had was the extension of tenant protections via AB 832. And the rental assistance program that the state of California is running is tied directly to, I said AB 832, but it's SB 832. So please make that correction. That was my error. And so we are working extensively right now with the state to ensure that those provisions are being met. While at the local level, the city of LA has one of the most stringent protections through our emergency orders to prevent people from being evicted while that state emergency order is in place. And so we have SB 832 protections, and then we have our local emergency protections in place right now. And lastly, just for our comprehensive look at affordable housing policy and legislation, we are actively advocating for every single increase in funding at the federal level through the Build Back Better legislation and reconciliation efforts. And we've been actively pursuing that the federal government or that Congress keeps the housing package as intact as possible. And that includes an increase in vouchers and an increase in the housing tax credit extensions, and also increased funding both for the National Housing Trust Fund and the home allocation that we get. So all of this, without the federal package, I mean, we're not going to be able to assist as many people as we can. But this type of advocacy and additional funding resources allows the city to be able to effectuate the programs that I outlined during my presentation. So I will stop there with my last slide and my summary slide, if you can go to the next slide. To end is that we are engaged in collaborating with the county. We can't do this alone. And we will only be successful if everybody has a fair share or puts their best foot forward to be able to address this housing crisis that affects literally everybody across the board. Policy, funding, and process improvements are key ways to move forward, and these should address the entire spectrum of housing and homelessness needs. And we have to be able to stop housing insecurity in order to stop more instances of homelessness. And so that's really what my job is at the mayor's office, and I take that very seriously. And more importantly is, how do we meaningfully implement these efforts through an equity lens and really be able to address that head on. So I will stop there, and I really appreciate your time and also your invitation to participate in this important conversation.
So I'll step in here, Heather, and just say thank you to all of the presenters today, in particular, all of you that participated in prepping for the housing presentation. As you can see, there was so much information to share. I'm so glad that we post the presentations on the website, and you're able to go back and look at this information more extensively. You will also have access to our presenters' information in case you want to follow up, and all of the questions and answers we will log and make sure they're also included in the HICP. I also just want to say two special thank yous. One to Guadalupe Duran Medina for your leadership, and Supervisor Solis's for allowing us the time at the Health Innovation Partnership to address these very complex housing intersects. So thank you so much, Guadalupe, for your leadership. And lastly, to Elisa Chavez Frago, our translator, because I cannot imagine how difficult it is to be translating so much technical language during this important meeting. So thank you so much to Elisa as well. Back to you, Heather.
Thank you, one and all. I am so sorry we didn't get as much time as we'd hoped for Q&A today. Obviously, there was so much detail to cover here. There were so many fabulous presentations and ideas raised. Next December's meeting, which will be on Friday, December 3rd, we will be also getting an update on the metro area plan, and hopefully we can dig in a little more deeply on some of these questions. I'm also going to share the questions out with our presenters, collect them back, and share a transcript of the chat and responses to questions with everyone for today's meeting. But as we are definitely past time, I think we will conclude today's meeting now just with a great thank you to all of our presenters and those who kind of worked together to make today's presentation work. Lastly, but not leastly, my final request of the day to please fill out our annual member survey. Share with us your thoughts and ideas for what you really want to hear about in the meetings to come. And if there's any concluding thoughts, I am happy to take them. Otherwise, we'll say thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your month. Happy Veterans Day next week and Thanksgiving 2 weeks after that. And we will see you back here on Friday, December 3rd.
Heather, we did have a few requests for announcements. If those that want to announce are still on, you're welcome to share. If not, send us what your announcement is and we will send it out in the HICP listserv.
Heather, can I talk about the EHE project really quick?
Sure, absolutely.
I don't know if you have our flyer, if you can pull it up.
Me?
Or I can pull it up. I don't know if I can screen share.
Oh, I can stop screen sharing.
Okay, let me pull it up real quick.
Are there any other announcements while we wait for Elizabeth to find the flyer?
Yeah, hi, this is Vivian Escalante. I'd like to make an announcement. Next Thursday, we are going to be having a celebration for the veterans, and that's going to actually be held at 5 Points, also known as Cinco Puntos, and it starts at 10 a.m. in the morning, and we certainly hope that we'll see many of you participating to support our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. If you have a flyer or anything, please send it our way. We'll send it out to the full list.
I'll definitely get that out to you.
Great, thank you.
And Heather, Robert from our jobs developer team had an announcement. I think he put it in the chat, so we can send that flyer out later today. That would be great. And then I'd also heard Ruby Rivera had something to share. I don't know if she's still on. She may have already left us. I will reach out to her and have her send her announcement in. And are you ready, Elizabeth? Can we go back to you?
Yeah, I found it.
Great.
So I'm going to screen share our flyer. So I'm going to present really quick on it. So if you would like to read it, you are more than welcome to. So good morning, everyone. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm a project coordinator at the Wellness Center. I'm so happy to share our partnership with the Mott Institute. We'll be working together alongside the community to end the HIV epidemic in LA County. So this initiative will consist of 10 cohorts, and our cohorts will be known as the HIVE, HIV.E. So these cohorts will focus on reducing HIV infection and transmission rates through community outreach, education, and empowerment efforts. We will be focusing on 4 pillars, which include to diagnose, treat, prevent, and respond. So I'm going to speak a little bit about what the cohorts will be doing. So cohort members will be tasked with innovative community projects to develop strategies that will lead community engagement. They will also attend monthly meetings and trainings for skill and capacity building. So this will increase HIV education in impacted communities. And create a positive, and this will also help you create a positive impact in your community. This project also offers stipends for people that are, for community members that are selected for our cohorts. We are still taking applications, so if anyone is interested, I will provide my information. You can reach out to me. I'm also happy to present at any of your meetings that you have. And I can also drop off flyers anywhere you would like me to. So we have, our applications are open until November 12th. So if you know anyone or yourself you would like to join, we're more than happy to have you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. So yeah, so we'll send the application form around with all the other fantastic information shared here today. But as mentioned, we're actively recruiting people to participate as a member of our cohorts, our community cohorts, which will be surrounding LA County. Are there any final thoughts or announcements?
Just Guadalupe, I uploaded a flyer in Spanish and in English for the metro area plan update for the East. You know, it includes the the areas of Southeast LA and East LA. You know, again, just if folks can share extensively, it's November 10th.
Great. Thank you so much, Guadalupe. That's just next week. My goodness. Well, everyone, thank you. Those who have powered through to the end of 11:15. We haven't done this in a while. We've been ending more or less on time, but this was just one of those presentation days where there was just too much to cover in the time allocated. My gratitude to each of you who's been able to free up your schedules and stay with us to this very end point. But I hope you've enjoyed the presentations, food for thought, opportunities for reflection. The slide decks we'll send around does have contact information. So if you want to follow up specifically with anyone you heard presenting here today, please feel free to do so. And we really appreciate all of the interest and efforts. And with that, I will indeed finally say goodbye. Have a fantastic Veterans Day. Happy Thanksgiving to one and all. Please swing by the Wellness Center to see our beautiful altar and visit with one of the artists. With that, I'll say goodbye, everybody.